My name is Oeser-Sweat of the Law Offices of Oeser-Sweat PC. If you're watching this video, chances are a loved one has been arrested recently and you're trying to learn a little bit about the arraignment process. In this video, I'll try to help you out so that you can expeditiously get the information you need to find your loved one and provide assistance. The arraignment process in New York can take anywhere from 24 to 72 hours. Basically, once someone's arrested, at some point the police officers place their information into a computer system which generates an arrest number. That arrest number is the first thing that you're going to need to get so that you can track your loved one through the criminal justice system or towards arraignment. Once the police officers that have arrested your loved one input your loved one's information into their computer system and an arrest number is generated, that person will then at some point be taken down to central booking. Central booking is exactly what the name implies, and it is indeed a central place where they take defendants on their way to court and to an arraignment judge. Once your loved one gets to central booking, they're going to be waiting around for a bit. They may or may not have access to a phone at that point, so you may be getting calls. Either way, you're going to have to keep the phone lines open because at some point, an agency called the Criminal Justice Agency, or CJA, is going to interview your loved one. They're going to be asking things like, where does your loved one work? Do they have a job at all? Whether or not they make money and how much, whether or not they're educated, whether or not they live with someone, whether or not they have had an address in the city, how long they've had that address, how long they've had a telephone, if they have a telephone at all. Those answers that are given to CJA will basically dictate what CJA decides to recommend with respect to the bail that might be set. Once CJA makes a recommendation to the judge will review that recommendation at arraignment, which I'll explain later, and make a determination. Why are you important? Because chances are your loved one is going to give the CJA a particular number to call so that they can verify the information that's been given to them. That's why it's very important that you keep the phone lines open and that at some point, the police department and the district attorney give documents to the court, at which point the court generates a file. That file is assigned a unique docket number. The docket number that's assigned to your loved one will be the next way that you're going to track your loved one towards arraignment. Once a docket number is assigned, actually, you're rip-roaring ready. Once a court assigns a docket number, basically at some point in the near future, an arraignment will take place. What's that mean? That means at some point, once there's a docket number in the near future, your loved one is about to see a judge. So if you've called down to the arraignment clerk and you've seen that your loved one has a docket number, chances are it's about time to get down to the courthouse to find out when the arraignment's going to occur, because it's going to occur soon. One of the most important things to let the attorney that's doing the arraignment know is whether or not your loved one is a citizen. If your loved one is not a citizen, it is very important that you let the attorney that is doing the arraignment know that. Why? Because there are a whole bunch of collateral consequences that can take place if someone is a non-citizen and takes certain types of pleas or negotiated disposition. That being the case, if your loved one is not a citizen, make sure that you let the attorney that is doing the arraignment know that status of your loved one. At some point, an arraignment is going to occur. What's an arraignment? Put simply, an arraignment is a court proceeding where your loved one is going to go in front of a judge. The charges against your loved one are going to be announced, and your loved one will have the opportunity to plead guilty or not guilty. Subsequent to pleading guilty or not guilty, a whole bunch of other stuff is going to happen. Basically, after the charges are read, the court has to decide whether or not a bail should be set. At some point in the arraignment process, the judge is going to decide a bail. When the judge decides a bail, basically the judge is trying to determine whether or not your loved one is a flight risk. Put simply, that means the court wants to know and decide whether or not your loved one will come back to court on the next court date. If the judge decides that that person might be a flight risk for a whole bunch of reasons, the judge will set a bail. When an attorney is arguing against the bail, the attorney has to let the court know a whole bunch of things. The court is going to decide flight risk for bail purposes based upon a number of factors, including the ties to the community that person has, whether or not that person has a family, whether or not that person supports a family, who that person lives with, whether or not that person has ties to New York City and the county they're being arraigned in, whether or not people have decided to come out. Because the fact of the matter is, if nobody's even bothered to come out to see or support your loved one at the arraignment, the judge is not necessarily going to believe there are significant ties to the community. The judge is also going to consider during the bail argument whether or not the person works, what kind of education they have, and the severity of the charges. Often the DA asks for a significant bail. Sometimes they don't ask for bail. The judge is also going to look at the CJA report. Oftentimes CJA represents and recommends that someone isn't really a flight risk and that they probably shouldn't have a bail. That's why it's very important, like I said earlier, that someone be home to verify the information given to CJA by your. If you're going to post the bail the night of the arraignment in the courthouse and you're prepared to do that, it's important that you let the attorney that's doing the arraignment know that ahead of time. Why? Because that person has to let the court know that the bail will be posted. And it's preferable that that happens while the defendant is still in the courtroom. If that's not what takes place, the defendant might go to one of the borough houses, at which point you're going to have to post bail there. And that means that your loved one will be in jail for a little longer than they had planned. So, put simply, if you're able to pay the bail, let the attorney know in the courtroom. Don't take any chances and don't hesitate or delay. The decision to hire an attorney for arraignment is a difficult one. I know a whole bunch of you are saying to yourself, should I or should I not hire an attorney? The fact of the matter is, I gotta give a disclosure. I am a private attorney, if you didn't know that already. However, I gotta tell you, there are a whole bunch of amazing institutional lawyers out there at Legal Aid, a whole bunch of 18B people who are out there doing an amazing job for people. So don't just disparage or discount an attorney just because they work for an institutional provider. The fact is, those institutional providers basically do the bulk of the legal work in this community, and they should be commended. In summary, the first thing you're going to do is get an arrest number. The next thing you're going to do is find a document. At some point, you're going to want to let the attorney that's working on the case know whether or not your loved one is a citizen. You're going to want to know and let them know whether or not you can post bail in the courtroom, and you want to keep the phone on so that when CJA calls to get confirmation about what your loved one said, you're there and able to confirm that information. This video may be considered attorney advertising in some jurisdictions. Prior results are no indication whatsoever of the potential for future outcome. Once again, I'm Oeser-Sweat of the law offices of Oeser-Sweat PC in New York. Hopefully you're able to get your loved one out of jail and home. Thank you.